All right, so the Caitlin Clark discourse has gone completely off the rails, like every sports discourse seems to get, including an article from Complex Sports by Zion Alajuwide, sorry if I butchered that, and Cameron Hay, where the title is, why do y'all hate Caitlin Clark so much? Is it a race thing? Do people believe she's overrated? Do people think she's too cocky? The Complex team sat down to answer questions as to why people hate Caitlin Clark. I read this entire article because when I was first planning this segment, it was in a similar vein, but let me tell you the main difference. No one hates Caitlin Clark. Nobody does. You can't. How can you? She's an exciting player. She don't do shit but play basketball really well. The discourse around her is not her fault. She doesn't pour into it. She doesn't pour gasoline on the flame. In fact, when the microphone's in front of her, she does the best she can to quill it, but we'll get there in a second. So the correct title and what my segment is going to focus on is, why is the discourse around Caitlin Clark so shitty? The tweet that came out from CNN, which they deleted, or else if you're watching the video, it'll be plastered right now, right after they lost the national championship, was of her walking off the court losing. Rebecca Lobo and Ryan Rucco, who were announcing the game for ESPN, were very clearly rooting for Iowa the entire game. Clearly, they didn't even try to hide it. So again, I say, guys, we don't hate the 22-year-old who plays basketball well. I promise you, we don't. No one does. She hoops. She talks shit every once in a while, which I personally love. I know there's people who hate seeing confident women, but those people are fucking losers. They're not worth addressing anyways. So I'm going to do a little quick deep dive analyze on a lot of the points they brought up, but I'm going to see if I can do it with a little bit more coof. Cool. Let's hit the elephant in the room first thing foremost. When people ask why Caitlin Clark is on the rise, the first thing they bring up as to why it becomes so controversial is because she's white. There's a long history of the great white hope in particularly boxing and basketball, but the great white hope in athletics in general is a main theme that we constantly encounter with sports narratives, right? You add in that there are few forces stronger than white woman victimhood in all of America, because I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of her rise to fame was after Angel Reese hitting her with the same taunt that she hit in the Final Four the week before that happened last year's national championship. Now, to Caitlin Clark's credit, and I will always give her credit for this, every outlet gave her every chance to play the victim, and she turned it down every single time. She stood on business every time, which again, backs my point. No one hates Caitlin Clark. She's done nothing wrong. She's done nothing wrong. And before we get to the why everything has to be made about race, man, why do y'all make everything about race? Well, one, I live in Maryland, and a boat hit a bridge in Baltimore, and the Republican crowd blamed it on our quote-unquote DEI mayor, because apparently you can get hired to be the mayor as a diversity hire, because elections don't exist anymore. Fucking idiots. So I'm not hearing your everything's about race arguments anymore. Fuck out of here. Next, we got play style. The way Caitlin Clark plays basketball is naturally exciting. One of the most exciting forces ever in any NCAA tournament is when the random white guy who's going to end up selling insurance randomly gets hot from three, like the dude from Oakland College that's not in Oakland, California, whose name is escaping me right now. Whatever his name is. When the random white dude gets hot from three in the NCAA tournament, we love it. We're locked in every single time. Only difference is, this isn't a random white dude. It's the white superstar who's going to end up being the first pick in the draft. This doesn't happen except for one other case. Steph Curry. I know he ain't white, but follow me here. When Steph Curry was at Davidson, it was must-see TV. For y'all that weren't alive for this or weren't basketball fans for this, oh, buddy, you missed out. Oh, my God. It was great watch. And Nick Wright made this point, and I'm going to steal it and add on to it. Hear me out on this, right? Caitlin Clark is the Kobe to Steph Curry's Michael Jordan. What I mean by that is every single player who grew up watching Michael Jordan attempted to emulate his play style. Kobe Bryant is the only one who did it successfully. Every single player who grew up watching Steph Curry tried to emulate his play style. Caitlin Clark is the only one to do it successfully. That is what I mean when I say the Steph and Caitlin similarities. You could even see the discourse of it is very similar. You got the professional players and former players saying, yo, this ain't gonna work When you get to the WNBA, the game's different, blah, blah, blah. And we'll get to the WNBA point a little later in this segment. But here's the difference. And this is the main separator as to why those two things are received so differently. When Steph was coming up, nobody was saying that Steph Curry was already better than Michael Jordan before he went to the NBA. That's the difference. That's the difference right there. There are people saying Caitlin Clark is the GOAT right now before she even played in the WNBA. And that's just silly. It's just silly. Next step is the media hype and the media attention. I'm going to couple this with the type of coverage and the timing that Caitlin Clark is playing in. Two parts of this. One, I remember Rebecca Lobo in the Women of Troy documentary on HBO that centers around that Cheryl Miller, Cynthia Cooper, McGee twin USC team that went back-to-back championships. Iconic women's basketball team, covers the history of women's basketball as well. For new fans of the women's game, go watch that. That'll pretty much catch you up to speed, right? But Rebecca Lobo made this point. I thought it was prominent. She said, if I was born 10 years earlier, the facilities I was able to make use of at UConn would not have been there because Title IX wasn't in place yet. So I am a Title IX baby. Let's apply that to Caitlin Clark. If she was born 10 years earlier, the media coverage wouldn't have been the way it was, regardless of how good she is. But let me tell you the common denominator on every single one of those issues I just listed, right? Here's the one common denominator. None of that matters if Caitlin Clark was not really fucking good at basketball. None of that matters. There ain't enough media hype in the world. Ain't enough white woman victimhood in the world. Ain't enough you play so cool in the world. You can't be pretty enough. You can't be none of that matters if she is averaging 2 points a game. She's the all-time leading scorer in points in the NCAA history, male or female. This media hype, the white privilege, is not putting the ball in the basket for her. Side note, I can't wait to get a bunch of comments from the first half of this video for people that did not make it this far. If you made it this far, just go ahead and put a laughing emoji next to those. She's second all-time in assists. She owns so many records for tournament play, etc., etc. Caitlin Clark is incredible, which at the base of all of this is what makes this shit go, because she's good. Which leads me into the GOAT conversation for her. And are we ready for some nuance, ladies and gentlemen? I know we don't do nuance on our sports talk anymore, but I have to. I can't help it. She is already a legend. I'll take it one step further. Caitlin Clark is already a Hall of Famer. She's just not the GOAT yet. And that is okay. If God forbid she doesn't take a single dribble in the WNBA, she is already going to the Hall of Fame because it is called the Basketball Hall of Fame. It's not called the NBA or WNBA Hall of Fame. College players are in the Hall of Fame. How do I know that? See Cheryl Miller, who is at the tippity top of the GOAT list, if we're going to do that. And for y'all not familiar with Cheryl Miller, the only reason why she didn't play in the WNBA was, one, it didn't exist yet, and two, she had a catastrophic knee injury the summer after her senior year anyways. Now, in a separate conversation, I think all GOAT conversations are dumb, to be completely honest. Everyone has their own personal criteria. We don't have a single set of rules to what makes somebody a GOAT and what makes somebody not. Which is weird in a sport where we have numbers for literally fucking everything. But GOAT conversations, we're all just spitballing here. But sure, for the sake of the exercise, let's do it. Imagine showing up to the GOAT party completely ringless and looking four-time champion Breanna Stewart in the face. How does that even make sense to you? Looking at Maya Moore in the face. Caitlin Clark's hero, by the way. When her worst season at UConn was a loss in the Final Four. There are no GOAT conversations, regardless of sport, that feature players that don't have rings. Example, I love Allen Iverson. He is the most impactful and most influential basketball player to ever live, debate your mama. However, in GOAT conversations, I gotta leave him out of it because he don't got a ring. Does that sound familiar to y'all? And that is okay. That does not make Allen Iverson a lesser player. We all love AI. And we haven't even got to the WNBA part of this conversation yet, and I also find that interesting. First, let's go to the viral Diana Taurasi quote that got everybody's panties in a bunch.
College guys come out. They're waiting for him. I mean, Camilla's coming. Caitlin's coming. There's more than just that are coming. What will the league have in store for them when they get there?
Look, SVP, reality is coming.
Okay.
There's levels to this thing. And that's just life. We all went through it.
Of course.
And you see it on the NBA side, and you're going to see it on this side, where, you look superhuman playing against 18-year-olds, but you're going to come with some grown women that have been playing professional basketball for a long time. Not saying that it's not going to translate, because when you're great at what you do, you're just going to get better. But there is going to be a transition period where you're going to have to give yourself some grace as a rookie. And, it might take a little bit longer for some people.
Now, before I break this clip down, notice how Sue Bird is sitting right next to her in this very clip, who has been nothing but complimentary of Caitlin Clark, including a whole segment on her ESPN show, Sue's Places, where she interviews Caitlin Clark, has a shoot around with her. I think in that same game, when asked to pick between who she'd build her team around, Paige Beckers or Caitlin Clark, UConn alumni Sue Bird picked Caitlin Clark. Nobody brings that up because we just love to focus on negativity, but sure. Now back to the clip. First, you see how she wasn't just talking about Caitlin? She was talking about all the rookies. Second, she's absolutely fucking correct. Going from college to the pros is really fucking hard, regardless of sport. It's hard for everybody. And not only is it not hating for Diana Taurasi to do this, she is more than qualified to be the person to say this. She went from being a 3-time champion, 3-time All-American at UConn, averaging 16.2 points as a senior at UConn, to going to the WNBA and averaging 17 points a game, first team All-WNBA and one Rookie of the Year. So if anyone can talk about how the transition between the WNBA and college is, it's her. And what else bothers me from the discourse around Caitlin Clark and the separator between her herself is she don't even agree with y'all. Roll the clip.
Caitlin, Caroline Fitzgerald from Goals. You're an inspiration to so many young girls. But you're also an inspiration to so many women who played sports and basketball when they were growing up. So what message would you like to share with those women who've helped blaze this trail to have women's basketball shine like it is today?
I would say the biggest thing is just thank you. And, that's what I always talk about is like, women's basketball isn't just suddenly good. Like, it's been good.
So to the other side of this, day one WNBA fans and women's basketball fans, I do hope that we can make the distinction between how Caitlin Clark feels about her predecessors and women's basketball players and the way these new wave of fans feels, because they could not be more dissimilar. Speaking of which, due to Caitlin Clark elevating the game, which is undeniable fact, by the way. Go look at all the TV ratings and viewership that's been happening her last 3 games. It's ridiculous. Would the success of Caitlin Clark in the WNBA ultimately be good for the entire league? From where I'm sitting, unequivocally yes. Right? But these are still competitive athletes she's going against. They aren't going to welcome her in with open arms and an open lane to the hoop. That's not how this works. You are still a rookie. You want to be the face of the league? Go earn that shit. And why would we want it any other way? Look how we reacted when they called the most blatant moving screen in the world against Aaliyah Edwards at the end of the UConn game, saying that they were cheating for her in that fashion. Imagine if they actually did on the WNBA. You'd all be pissed. So let's just, hypothetically speaking, say she goes to a WNBA full of vets that all hate her, which we know isn't true, but for the sake of the exercise, let's say that's true. Good. For a player like Caitlin, that's fantastic. Can you imagine the first time she hits a Steph Curry-esque fuck you 3 in Diana Taurasi's eye? How crazy that's going to go on the timeline? This is what we should want. This is sports. So in conclusion, because this segment has already gone longer than I wanted to, guys, we can have nuance in these conversations. I promise we can. Is Caitlin Clark a generational player, incredible talent, and a legend in her own right? Yes. Has she already elevated women's basketball to a point that cements her as a Hall of Famer already? Yes. Is she already the go-to women's hoops? No. This isn't hard. This is not hard. I promise it isn't.